Welcome to Season 4 of the Powered by Rock podcast. We'll bring you the best stories in rock music with a focus on highlighting independent rock musicians and their music from all over the world. No, rock music isn't dead. It's getting better and better. It's just time for you to start paying attention again. With that said, let's get this party started.
The mountain's gonna rise and fall by me.
Hello and welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Coleman. And today I wanted to continue our DIY rock career conversations that I was bringing up. Well, I think I had 2 already in the series. This might be the 3rd or 4th. I can't remember. But I basically want to make sure that people who are musicians out there have the ability to understand how to grow themselves into career musicians, as a band or as a solo musician or whatever. So that way they can actually make a career from the thing that they love the most. So, I have a background in business consulting and small business management, and using that stuff and applying it directly to your band or yourself as a musician can really help you grow. Now, I think this episode, just like any episode that we do, is going to be interesting to anybody who listens, but it'd be, even more so, I think, for musicians out there who also follow us and listen to this podcast. So I believe that the concepts that I'm going to talk about today will not only be applicable to music, like I was saying, but to pretty much any business, any career, or even just your everyday lifestyle. So in today's episode, I want to spend some time talking about the topic, how to become a more productive and successful musician, and how you as a musician can apply these ideas to your music career now to help make progress towards the end goal of making a living from your music without having to work a day job. Now, the first thing I want to essentially talk about on this topic is knowing what goals make sense to set. And that's where we're going to talk about, how you actually become more productive. You first have to actually, look to hit something, hit a goal, hit a target, something like that, right? And there's a $10 business word out there that a lot of people use. You may have heard it before, but likely if you're a musician, you probably don't know that much about business, running a business or even business jargon in general. But there's a word called a SMART goal, or a concept called a SMART goal, that a lot of people use, but most people who even talk about it don't really understand it, because if they did, it's actually more like a $100,000 business word. Anytime you start setting SMART goals for yourself, you can start hitting 6 and 7 figures in revenue annually just by setting these goals and then actually attempting to hit them. Now, what a SMART goal is a goal that you set for yourself in the near future, let's say over 12 to 18 months from now. That is both a big thing you want to achieve and something that is realistically possible. We'll talk about, each of these sections in a bit, but the acronym stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So SMART, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's talk about each one of these so that way you have an understanding of what I'm even talking about when I say that these are SMART goals, why you need to set them, why you actually need to, put something out there to try to hit, so that way you can actually be more successful and more productive. So the S stands for specific, which this part of it actually is, the SMART goal has to be something specific to you, coming closer to your vivid vision, your end goal, right, of being successful and happy with your music career and your life goals. So you have your vivid vision, that might be like 3 years in the future. You have a goal that you want to achieve, when you're happy and successful, here's what you're going to be doing, right? But in between that, there's going to be a lot of little things that you have to actually achieve. So if you want to check out the previous 2, conversations we have about this on the podcast, you can definitely do that. Create a vivid vision, then you come back and start a SMART goal, and then we'll even talk about 90-day planning and stuff like that. But let's put it this way. So for example, if you want to make $1 million, that's great, but you're probably not going to realistically do that in the next year, right? So instead of thinking, hey, I'm going to make $1 million in a year, especially if you're not anywhere close to that, why don't you focus on something specific that is more achievable in the next year? Like, I want to make $3,000 in income per month from my music career so I can work 3 days to cover expenses and turn my music career into a full-time career, right? So $3,000 income, that's pretty specific. And then if you're talking about how you can work 3 days a week instead of 5, that's very specific, right? So that's a specific thing that you can actually point to. And it's not inconceivable to think that this specific number could be achieved in 12 to 18 months. And it might be about halfway to your 3-year vivid vision that I talked about in the last episode of the DIY rock career as well. So try to think of a specific goal you want to achieve during this next year to year and a half. Now let's talk about the M, which stands for measurable. So you should be able to measure the success of your goal, meaning there's likely going to be a number or a concept that you set forth that you can look at and say, I hit that goal 100%, or I hit that goal 75%, or whatever, right? So if you're thinking $3,000 in monthly income, did you hit that 100%? Are you making $1,000? Did you make 33% or whatever, right? So it's got to be measurable. So for example, if you decide that you want to make $5,000 in monthly income from your music in the next 18 months instead of 3,000 in the next 12, then when the 18 months are up, you should be able to look at your goal and see how close you came to the goal. Now, if you're making $5,000 or more, then you hit the goal or exceeded, obviously. If you're still making zero in income or less than your goal, you can look at the last 18 months and take into account where you went wrong, and you can adjust things accordingly. I will say, though, if you're waiting until the 18th month to make an adjustment, you're probably like 15 or 16 months behind where you'd be if you learn how to adjust as you go. So when you set a SMART goal, the goal may change slightly as you start going and realize what's more realistic, what's more possible, but you can actually set it and then say, okay, this is what I'm going to strive to hit because I believe it's achievable and all that stuff, and it's measurable and it's specific to me. And we'll talk more about all this other stuff. But the idea is that as you go, you may realize that certain things you can get done faster and other things may take a little bit longer. So you might have to adjust some things as you go with this. Now, the A stands for attainable, right? This is the part of the goal that, you have to have some semblance of sanity here, right? You need to be able to look at it and say, is this actually going to be possible? You can probably make seemingly impossible things happen over a long period of time, like 10 years. People landed on the moon over like 5 years, right? From when they first started, 5 to 10 years. That's pretty impossible. But they didn't do it in 10, 12 months, 18 months, right? We're talking about a short period of time. So you're not going to see a life-changing, completely drastic thing happen. That's kind of what the vivid vision is. You're going to see a kind of a life-altering event in 3 years. But in 12 to 18 months, you're going to see big steps towards that, but not actually achieve it. So think about this in a attainable way, right? So think about what's more grounded. What's the grounded approach to hitting the goal in the next 12 to 18 months? There's a fine line between taking a huge step and taking the next big step in terms of managing your success. So a huge step would be like, hey, I went from 0 to $1 million. Like that's like winning the lottery. It's not going to happen. But taking a next big step, like, hey, I'm actually making a monthly income from my, music career. I'm making $1,000 or $2,000. That's a huge step from, 0 or just not really even thinking about it to actually incoming income every single month. So if I say, for example, I just want to make $1 million a year in the next 18 months, like I said, that's kind of like asking to hit the lottery. Sure, it's possible, but the probability of that happening, unless you're on your way to hitting that mark already, is not very high. It's infinitesimal. Instead, think about this as the attainable part, as something that you need to accomplish in order to make your bigger vision become reality. So what's going to make you happy as a musician, right? What steps do you need to get there? So if you need to quit your job so that you can pursue music full time, then maybe that's your next big step in order to achieve your vivid vision. And I'm not saying you do that day one, right? Like you work towards that, but you can say, I need to quit my job so I can work full time on my music. So, as a tip, I will say, don't quit your day job now and say, oh, but Isaac said I need to quit my day job to achieve my goals. At some point, it's almost certain that you probably will have to quit your job in order to fulfill your life goals as a musician. But don't do it without at least putting yourself in a good position to limit your risk of becoming homeless, broke, and destitute, right? The reality is most musicians right now are still working day jobs. And it's not like you're in a rush to quit the job, even if you hate it, like it still pays the bills, right? You're in a rush. The only thing you're in a rush to is start growing and being more productive and successful with your music career. You can do those things simultaneously. And if you start to reduce your hours instead of fully quit right away, in your day job, then you can move forward without just being like, hey, I can't afford bills anymore, right? So you start to kind of balance that act out with, part work, part music. And then as the music starts making more, you start pushing down the hours that you have to work, right? So, I will say that even though most musicians still work day jobs, if a lot of these musicians really focus on growing their careers progressively and had a good plan with a system attached to their success, they might not have to keep that day job for very long. most people actually just don't know how to make money or, run a business, which is what you have to do as a band or as a musician, right? So the point is, if you choose a realistic goal like quitting your job, think about what that means for your music career. You need to have income from your music to pay your bills, and or you need to make steps to drastically lower the amount of money that you need in order for you to exist. And you might have to change your lifestyle, right? So like if your current rent is $2,500 and you think that you're going to make that all from, plus, food and other expenses that you have all from your music, that's great. But maybe instead you say, okay, look, maybe if I bought a house, I can sell the house or whatever, and then move into an apartment and use some of the funds to help grow my music career or whatever. You could do that. That's more drastic, but that is something you can do. The other thing is that you can obviously just start focusing on ways to actually make more income, right, from your music. So now the R part, so SMA, now we're on R. R is relevant. So this part just takes into account whether or not you're trying to pursue a goal that is actually relevant to the vision you set for your music career. So if you say that your next SMART goal is to be a TikTok star with a bunch of viral videos, it's likely that you're not looking at that through the lens of whether or not that is good for your music career, or if that's just something that is somewhat related, right? Like it's not really even related. I see people posting on TikTok all the time, and does that really help your music career? Probably not. Like it might help you get some, buzz, but that doesn't necessarily equate to value or revenue or sales or income, right? It depends on what you're doing. If you're just looking to get a viral video, like I've seen somebody, get 1 million streams on TikTok and on Instagram, and sure, they got maybe like $2,000 out of that over the course of like, a couple months, but they're really, it had nothing to do with their music. It was literally just like a joke that they did. And once they actually, stopped doing that, or that thing stopped being viral, they went right back to basically not having, any real virality or any real, scene that they're a part of. Like it just wasn't part of the strategy of growing their career. It was just a one-off thing that helped them get a little bit of money. And then from there, it was like, cool, gone and, here and gone, right? So that's not something that you can really bank on, just going viral on social media. And I wouldn't say that that's even necessarily helpful for your musical career, unless it's you playing music or your song is going viral or whatever, right? That's the only time that really is a super relevant reason to get viral or go, become a social media star or whatever. Instead, I would say hyper focus on your music and ways to grow your visibility for that music specifically first. And if TikTok is part of that visibility, or Instagram or whatever, then so be it. But it shouldn't be the goal, right? TikTok shouldn't be the goal. Music should be the goal. Making music and then also earning an income from that music so that you can continue to keep doing this, so you don't give up, get burnt out, and then want to quit, right? That's the thing. Most musicians quit because they don't realize that there's a path that they can actually do this with. So the T part of this is called time bound, which basically means you just need to have a deadline to your goal. So that way, when you can assess whether or not you hit the goal, on time or not, or how much of it you hit during that time period. So there's a pretty classic business thing that people talk about. It's called Parkinson's law. And what this means is it actually dictates that a deadline will be met regardless of how much time you give yourself to achieve it. So if you give yourself 10 years to hit something, it will take you 10 years to hit it. If you give yourself 1 year to hit your goal, you're more likely to achieve it in that year. So basically, if there's a deadline, you want to achieve something, you just set that deadline, and then you're more likely to achieve it during that deadline than if you set it longer or shorter. Like whatever that deadline is, you're more likely to hit it, because basically as humans, we know when a deadline's coming, so we work really, really hard to try to hit it, right? But unfortunately, with things like big life changes or big steps, you can't just wait till the last minute. So don't be crazy and stack the odds against you by choosing too quick of a time frame, because that'll kill your confidence if you don't hit it. Like, oh, I want to make $10,000 in income in the next 2 months. Well, that's pretty hard to do unless you're really close to that goal. Conversely, being too afraid to grab your dreams by the reins is going to really slow your progress and kill your momentum to achieve something that could potentially be accomplished sooner if you just didn't pick a long deadline. That's why we pick 12 to 8 months for this, depending on your goal, because it's relatively far enough in the future that big things can happen, but not so far that it's like overwhelming, right? Like that's so far in the future you can't imagine hitting something like that. Any shorter and a big goal is likely to fail, and any longer you could probably push yourself a little harder to get to your goal sooner. It's like the Snickers ad says, if you're hungry, why wait, right? Hungry, why wait? If you want something, don't keep putting it off. The more you do, the more likely you'll never attempt to achieve it. So if you keep pushing something further and further and you procrastinate, you'll almost likely never achieve that, right? So push yourself, but I'm not saying grind yourself to the bone either. You have committed daily actions that as you start doing them will start to exponentially push you in the right direction. Right now, I'm going to take a quick break, but I'll be back with more about this topic and what actions you can take right now to start moving your career forward. The Powered by Rock podcast will return right after this.
Reverend Guitars embodies the idea that every run of scorching lead and every roll of finger-picked twang deserve the same passion and commitment to quality. Whether you're selling out arenas or playing in your living room, we know that what makes an instrument powerful is when players wield them to create something remarkable. A melody that moves mountains, a riff that just won't quit. We want to be there in your hands when that happens. For us, that means staying true to what we believe. Somewhere along the road of electric guitar history, it became a crazy idea that guitar makers should craft guitars with the same sense of purpose and passion, whether they're played in a bedroom or an arena. If that's a wild idea, then we're in the right place, carrying 6 strings and an attitude, and we're in good company. Reverend Guitars. Well played.
Running your own music career is incredibly difficult. Trying to get people to like, share, comment, listen, follow, it's all just overwhelming. Most musicians give up before they ever achieve success, and that's the worst. If you're looking for a better way to grow your music career, head to DIYrockcareer.com for some absolutely free training. It costs you nothing, and it could be the difference between hitting your goals and quitting your dream. Go to DIYrockcareer.com today by clicking the link below this episode.
Then I lost my way.
Welcome back to the Power by Rock podcast, where I've been talking about the importance of building, a vision for success and putting it into a SMART goal for your music career and moving yourself towards it with every action you take. So let's talk about creating your SMART goal. So to actually create your SMART goal, you generally want to start with what you want to achieve, and then you back it up and basically reverse engineer it with some concepts or numbers to hit so that you can see what the reality of that goal looks like. You also want to use your why that you created from part 1 of this series to give yourself motivation through the SMART goal itself. You also have to adjust this if you're in a band and money is being split 3 or 4 ways. So however many people are in your band, you'll probably have to split this up in some way so that it makes sense. So here's an example of a SMART goal. So for a person in a band, my band and I will deliver $20,000 monthly income back to our band, so each of our 4 members can take $5,000 in income to allow us to keep creating music to inspire future generations and help us continue spreading joy and keeping us sane. So you can see there's some of the stuff about why they want to be in a band, right? Spreading joy, keeping them sane, inspire future generations. And they also have that measurable stuff of specific stuff like how much money they need and how they're going to measure it, right? To do this, we expect to do $60,000 in monthly revenue combined through music streaming, music and merch sales. So music and merch sales, live performances, and other revenue streams. So there's the kind of numbers they want to hit to actually achieve their goal. Any remaining profits will be added to the band account to use for costs of touring or gear or recording. We want to achieve this by July 6, 2024. So that gives them about a year from now when this thing's going to be obviously airing. So it's got everything. It's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant to them, and it's time bound. So they have a year to do this. And, this is probably a band that's already making some monthly income. It's probably not they're doing it from scratch because, you could start with smaller SMART goals if you're doing it completely from scratch, or, if you're just making a couple $100 per month, right? I'm not going to say that every band or musician is in a position to make $60,000 in revenue per month in the next year, but maybe you can hit 20,000 and get that much closer to the full goal of playing music as a career. So you basically just want to write this out, and you're going to actually get a template, right? So the thing that you need to do right now is go below this, show notes in this episode, below this episode, and download the SMART goal template so that way you can actually fill it out. So in the second step, make sure to set goals that are attainable and that you are not setting them to fail, right? So pick a long enough time period, 12 to 18 months, but not so high that you know that it's really not reality. But again, push yourself, right? So 3, don't be afraid to push yourself a little bit, because if the goal is too easy, then you will procrastinate all the way to get there, right? Like you're not going to get there if it's like, I just want to make $500 a month from my band or from my music career. I guarantee you could do that in like a month and a half. Like all you need to really do is like start playing shows. You can make $500. You just got to play the right shows, or, start, playing more shows or whatever. But you could do that pretty easily and sell some merchandise or whatever. Like you can make $500 in income from a band or your music career. Now that you know that, you can take it to the next step, right? So like, what can I actually make? And then step number 4, every month you'll need to start making plans to get you closer to this 12 to 18 month goal. So not only will you have a 90-day goal, you'll have a 30-day goal, and you'll start to push yourself each month to take little actions. Play this show, play that show, get merch for this, do whatever, right? So, release new music, release a single to streaming or whatever, right? So you have goals that you have to hit. And part of that is actually launching new music, releasing albums and all that stuff, and figuring out how to do that. But that's something we'll talk about much, much later. But right now you need to start planning out what you actually want to achieve, so that way you can then fill it in with things that you actually know will, get you there, right? So you have to know what you're trying to achieve, and then the hows will start to fill themselves in. So all this stuff that I'm talking about now is the hows, but we're not even talking about that yet. We're just backing up all the way to what you want to achieve and then filling that stuff out. Number 5, the more you stray or procrastinate from doing daily actions that get you closer to the goal, the more you will be upset at yourself a year from now. I've said this to many, many people that if you want to start something, start it today. Don't wait, right? If you want to stop smoking, just stop smoking today. I know it sounds crazy. Like I actually used to smoke. I stopped smoking and just said, I'm just going to stop. It's something that you can choose to do or not choose to do. If you want to get in shape, one of the goals when people are setting their vivid visions for success that I always hear is, I'm getting in shape. I've stopped doing this. I want to do that more. And I just go, well, those things aren't even things that you need to do in 3 years. You can do those right now. Like half of your happiness goal is literally just doing these 3 things that you can actually start right now. Put it in your calendar. Make sure you do it every single day that you say you're going to do it. If it's 4 times a week or 3 times a week, just do that. If you're quitting smoking or quitting drinking or cutting down or whatever, do it. Like there's nothing stopping you from hitting those goals. It's just your own self-motivation. And you keep saying, oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week, or I'll do it next month. There's always an excuse to keep doing something and create bad habits for yourself, or stay within a bad habit, or just not, make yourself be, comfortable enough to be happy, or uncomfortable enough to be happy, I should say. Because when you're comfortable, you're usually not that happy, which is crazy, because everybody who's like comfortable is like, oh, that's the ideal. Like you want to be comfortable so that way you don't have to worry about stuff, right? But it's that monotony of the comfortability that actually kind of drains people's life force, which is an interesting thing about humans. People want to change. People want to do things spontaneously. They want to have fun. They want to be happy. And it doesn't always come with just settling, right? So I know it's a strange concept, but I think a lot of musicians will know that for themselves, that, if they want to play music, they're not going to be comfortable. They're going to be happy, right? So that's what they, I just saw today, one of our former guests, Cairo Knife Fight, they posted that they have a new tour coming out, and the tour is called Making Friends Not Money Tour, because they know that like some of the times when you're, touring, you're not making a lot of money. You're just going out to try to get more exposure. So the making friends part is pretty much more accurate, right? Making friends, not money. But that's what they want to do. That's what they love to do. And these guys, they've been playing music for years, and they're very good at it. So they're going to get a large following, I think, from their tour. And that's why people go on the road. They don't just do it because they think, oh, it's something we have to do. We're going to lose money, or we're going to make money. They may think, hey, we're going to make a lot of money because we're going to go on tour. But reality sits in when you get to the first place and, you're opening and nobody's watching you, or you play to a bar in one of those small towns that has, 4 to 8 people in it, and none of them are really paying attention to what you're doing. So things like that happen. But at the same time, you can't just sit around and do nothing. The more you plan, the more you properly put this stuff together, the more time you give yourself, but not too much time, the more you can actually get this done. The more actions you take to get you closer, they will actually help you get to where you want to be. So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't procrastinate from doing daily actions. It could be something small. It could be something as small as making a social media post, or, writing a new song, or playing the guitar for an hour, or whatever it is. That there's certain things that you need to be able to do in your life to put you closer to your goal. You have to have the talent and the music side, but then you also have to have the business side. So think about them equally. Don't think like, oh, the music will help me be famous or successful. and I don't have to worry about the business side, because the business side is the part that's going to make you financially secure. It's not the music by itself. You have to have some way to market it. You have to have some way for people to consume it, and you have to have some way for, some money to be made off of it, right? And I'm not saying this to be like greedy. You're not going to be greedy. It's just, you are a talent. You are an artist, and you deserve to get paid for what you put out, right? Actors and writers and, other things of artists, scales, painters, all that stuff, always get paid for their work, when they're doing it professionally. Why wouldn't you expect to do the same? So that's what I'm telling you, is that, start setting goals, have that vision of what you think that success is going to be. Get yourself a SMART goal, go down, download this below the episode, and then fill that out. Start planning out what you actually want to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months. And that's pretty much it. So I know that this is not easy. I know that planning your business isn't like, the most fun thing in the world, but without it, you don't even, the hows aren't going to matter at all. You're just going to be taking shots in the dark of what you should be doing. TikTok, whatever, right? YouTube videos, whatever. It's the goals mixed with the hows that get you closer to where you want to be. So you have to have the goals first. And remember, being a musician is hard work, just like any other career. And just because you say you want to be a musician does not mean you will ever try to do it, or that you will do it with any real intention. So my goal is to help inspire you in any way possible to move closer to the goal of you creating this result for yourself. If you liked what you heard, make sure to go check out the links to the downloads below this episode so you can start applying these concepts to your music career today. Also, if you want to get some more ideas about how to move yourself towards a career in music, feel free to head to DIYrockcareer.com for some absolutely free training. If you feel that this episode would be helpful to a musician that you know, please be sure to subscribe and share the podcast on social media. That's our show for today. We'll see you soon for the next episode. Until then, rock on.
Supposed to be